612 BC, northern Mesopotamia. A river is rising, not slowly, the way rivers usually do, but violently, as if the earth itself has decided to weigh in on a war that has already lasted 3 years. Inside the city, the soldiers on the walls have been awake for 90 days. Their empire has never lost a capital. Their walls have never been broken. And yet tonight, in the flickering torchlight, something feels wrong. The ground beneath the northwestern gate is soft, too soft. No one in Nineveh knows that this is the last night their city will ever exist. Outside those walls, 3 armies from 3 different civilizations. Babylonians from the south, Medes from the mountains of the east, Scythian raiders from the north, are not just here to win a battle. They are here to collect a debt. 200 years of burned cities, 200 years of impaled kings, 200 years of an empire that ruled not through loyalty, not through prosperity, but through the one thing it had perfected into an art form: fear. Tonight, that debt comes due. To understand why 612 BC happened, you have to understand what Assyria was. Nineveh was its crown. King Sennacherib had rebuilt it around 700 BC from the ground up, not as a city, but as a statement. 7 miles of walls, 40 feet tall, 15 monumental gateways. A palace he called, without irony, the palace without rival. Those palace walls told the world exactly who it was dealing with. Room after room showed Assyrian armies dismantling cities, prisoners in neck stocks, leaders being flayed, bodies impaled on stakes outside burning gates, arranged for maximum visibility on the road, so the next city would see them on the way to negotiations. This was not decorative. This was operational psychology, carved in stone and placed where foreign ambassadors would walk. Under King Ashurbanipal, who ruled from 669 to 631 BC, the empire stretched from the Nile to the Zagros Mountains. Egypt conquered. Babylon leveled and rebuilt on Assyrian terms. The Elamites crushed so completely that Ashurbanipal boasted of scattering their ancestors' bones so their ghosts would find no rest. And yet, this same man built the world's first systematically organized library. More than 30,000 clay tablets, cataloged by subject. Medical knowledge, astronomical records. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written 1,000 years before the Hebrew Bible recorded its own flood narrative. Civilization and savagery in the same hands, at the same desk. That contradiction tells you everything about why Nineveh ended the way it did. When Ashurbanipal died around 631 BC, the empire looked invincible from the outside. Inside, it was already rotting. The mechanism of terror had a fatal design flaw. Fear works on people who still have something to lose. But Assyria had spent 2 centuries stripping conquered populations of almost everything. Leaders executed, skilled workers deported, gods stolen and relocated to Nineveh, cultural identities deliberately erased. These were not subjects who feared Assyria. These were people with nothing left to lose, which made them the most dangerous people on earth. When Ashurbanipal's successors began fighting each other for the throne, that was the signal everyone had been waiting for. In 626 BC, a Chaldean chieftain named Nabopolassar declared Babylonian independence. He was not backed by a superpower. He was backed by 2 centuries of resentment and the simple calculation that Assyria was too distracted to respond. He was right. Within 3 years, he had expelled Assyrian garrisons and crowned himself king of Babylon. Far to the east, the Median king Cyaxares had personal reasons to despise Assyria. His family had suffered under Assyrian subjugation for decades. He spent years rebuilding his forces and studying Assyrian military methods, the same methods used against him, and waiting for precisely this moment. In 614 BC, the Medes struck. Their target was not Nineveh, not yet. Their target was Ashur, the original Assyrian capital, the city that gave the empire its name and its god, its soul. The Medes razed it. When Nabopolassar arrived at Ashur's still warm ruins, the 2 kings formalized their alliance standing on the rubble. A Babylonian chronicle records this meeting with unusual brevity. as if even the scribes understood that what had just happened was too significant for ordinary language. Assyria was not yet dead, but something essential had been removed. In the summer of 612 BC, the coalition converged on Nineveh. The attackers knew these walls better than almost anyone. They had spent generations on the receiving end of Assyrian siege technology. Now they turned that same playbook against its inventors. Siege ramps, coordinated archers, engineering teams working the foundations under covering fire. The walls held. For weeks they held. Sinsharishkun, Assyria's last king, commanded the defense himself. Nineveh had supplies, a professional garrison, and 2 centuries of confidence. The city had survived threats before. Then the Khosr River, the river that ran directly through Nineveh, the river that fed its famous gardens, the river that made the city possible, betrayed it. Ancient sources, including the Babylonian Chronicle, record that the river swelled unexpectedly, whether from unseasonable rainfall, deliberate diversion by attackers, or infrastructure damaged by months of siege. The flooding undermined sections of the outer wall. A portion collapsed. The coalition poured through the gap. The book of Nahum had already written it. The gates of the river shall be opened, and the palace shall be dissolved. That prophecy was not metaphor. The river gate, the dissolved palace. He was right about both. Sinsharishkun died in the fall. The most repeated account says he burned in his own palace rather than be taken. The precise truth is lost, which is itself haunting. The last king of the world's first superpower, erased so completely that history cannot confirm how he died. What followed was documented not in triumphant inscriptions. Unusually, the victors commissioned very few, but in archaeology. Excavations near modern Mosul found skeletal remains of people who never reached shelter. A mother still holding a child. A craftsman, tools scattered. A classroom, mid-lesson, buried under a collapsed ceiling. And in the great library, the wooden shelving burned, the organic materials burned. But 3,000 clay tablets, baked harder by the very fire meant to erase them, survived. When Hormuzd Rassam excavated them in the 1850s, they were still readable. The most powerful empire the ancient world had ever known tried to destroy its own memory on its last night. It failed at that too. Nineveh was not destroyed because its enemies were stronger. When the coalition arrived at those walls in 612 BC, they did not have superior weapons or larger armies. What they had was time, and the particular motivation that only comes from surviving 200 years of deliberate, systematic cruelty. The Assyrian Empire built its power on a theory that if you made resistance terrible enough, no one would resist. Every act of terror was not a victory. It was a deposit into an account that would eventually come due. Every flayed rebel was someone's son. Every deported craftsman was someone's grandfather. Every stolen god was a religion's wound. 612 BC was the settlement date. The prophet Nahum had asked, "Nineveh is laid waste. Who will mourn for her?" No one did. An empire of over 2 centuries, and not one neighboring state mourned its fall. Not one former ally called for revenge. That silence is one of the most extraordinary facts in ancient history. And here is the final irony. The one thing that survived, the one thing the fire could not destroy, was the library. The humblest material in the ancient world. Sun-dried clay. It outlasted every wall, every palace, every record carved in stone to celebrate Assyrian power. Ashurbanipal had written, in his own tablets, that he gathered this knowledge so it would never be lost. He was right. He just didn't survive to see how. Nineveh fell in a single night. It has been speaking to us for 2,600 years. The question is whether we are listening.